Hi everyone, at last, as promised, we're going to look at questioning and the use of questioning in the classroom. This is probably, beside all the other things that we know, the most critical aspect of teaching, because thinking is driven not by answers, but by questions. And with the Cambridge ask, the syllabus reach, we know that thinking is a given. It simply must happen. So I'm going to record this, and for next week, I would really like you to pay attention to your questions that you're going to be asking. Some of the strategies later on actually focus on online, but you can use them in the classroom. And in your case, you might use them in both instances. But I would like you to at least think of 5 questions to use, either in the strategies or just within your teaching for next week, and post them to me on WhatsApp. The class grade that you're teaching and the 5 questions you're asking, and why you're asking them. Are you asking them for discussion purpose? Are you asking them for diagnostic purpose? Are you asking them for a hinge question? So can you move on? Do you need to go back? That type of thing, a hinge question. Okay, so from Cambridge we have this document, and in this document it's very clear that effective questioning is important. When you set up your questions as well, think about your learner success criteria. In other words, tell the learners you're going to be giving them 5 questions, 10, 20, whatever. And what is their success criteria? How are they going to measure their success criteria? By answering 3 correctly, by participating in the lesson, by thinking of their own question, that type of thing. So learner success criteria with each question is also important to think about. Okay, and just remember, you can pause at any time and, read it off your screen. Again, thinking is driven by answers, is not driven by answers, but by questions. To review prior knowledge, which is key, the context, what are the students going to hook onto, to challenge learner thinking, to stimulate curiosity, to increase active engagement. Remember, active learning, active engagement. To cultivate critical thinking skills. And lastly, to encourage learner questions so that the learners are asking questions. Types of questions: discussion questions, diagnostic questions, hinge point questions, deconstruction questions, questions and feedback, research questions, and Cambridge command words. I've included all of these in this presentation, and I'll show you a few examples. So in terms of discussion questions, these do not have a correct answer, but they facilitate debate and allow you as the teacher to discover the depth of learner reasoning and imagination by asking probing questions. Great for paired work, small groups, or whole class discussions. Diagnostic questions: literally, do they know or do they not know what they're supposed to know? So have they actually encoded, memorized the work as they need to? And that's quizzes, multiple choice, and so on. Hinge point questions is the point where you can move on from one key area or point chunk to another chunk. They're the most useful after a period of learning to ascertain whether you can continue, whether or not you need to fill gaps or clarify misconceptions. Hinge point questions are vital to ensure key concepts and content is fully understood before you move on. You should allow more time for the learners to think, 1 minute or so, and you respond quickly within 15 seconds, and the response is a snapshot, so not lengthy responses. Okay, I've put in Bloom's just because so much is based on Bloom's in the questioning. What I'd like to draw your attention to is the wording to use for analyzing, evaluating, and creating, instead of just asking the what, where, when, your lower order thinking. So please remember to work from application up, unless you're doing just a quick quiz. I've also done a slide here on questions and feedback, or feed forward. I quite like that feed forward because it indicates that you're taking a response and you're going forward with it. Modeling and scaffolding, again, think aloud, and if you do it, the students, your learners, should start to do it. What do I know about this topic? So, linking to your context. What do I think I will learn? Do I understand what I've just read? Do I have a clear picture? Can I visualize? What more can I do to understand this? This whole student learner success criteria. These are the types of questions that they can ask themselves related to their responses to questions. Then I've also done the slide on research questions. And just to point out the why questions, they don't cover evaluation. So they can be very narrow and not necessarily involve debate or argument to reach a conclusion. Do you agree with X, Y, and Z? Can be clear and focused, and an argument can be formulated. Best for debate and argument are questions starting with is, can, and does. And then there are factors to consider for research questions. This I love, deconstruction questions, to deconstruct an argument or a case study, or an argument given as a case study, or an argument posed in a textbook or an article. Is this firstly an argument? Is it an explanation, a report? Is it fact? Is it opinion, or a combination of these? So again, the structure of writing of the written work is so important. What does this author want to persuade us to accept? And has the author stated or only implied this conclusion? And so you go through what sort of evidence or argument might weaken or counter this reasoning. How strong or effective is the author's reasoning? So you can just pause and read through that. But this I love. I love this. I love this. It really gets to the depth of the students' reasoning and understanding. Cambridge command words, here are the primary words, and then these are the words given to us by the college, the upper secondary and ASA level. So it's just all in one place, one document. And then here's some ideas to encourage learner questioning. So firstly, it would be really beneficial if a learner asks a question and then other learners need to answer the question rather than the teacher. That's really cool. If you have a group that, or some children in the group that are a little bit more reticent to speak up, they can write down their responses. There can be a question wall where questions and responses can be posted. So slips of paper, questions, and they answered the questions they can at various times in lessons and so on and so forth. A question box or a problem book. Question starters. You give out the question starters and they must complete the question. Thinking aloud, as I said previously, what do I know about this topic, so on and so forth. And then Jeopardy, where you provide the answer and the students must guess the question. That's quite a cool one as well. And maybe you can, start a Zoom class with the answer and then go straight into, as they arrive, they go straight into trying to come up with what was the question. That could be really cool. So again, thinking is driven not by answers, but by questions. And so the questions and the level of your questioning is vital. Okay, and then the screen of knowledge for online, but also for in classroom. It's about you preparing really a very clear topic and purpose for the discussion. And the topic can be quite controversial. It can be rich with implications, arouse curiosity, have opposing hypotheses. It can be intriguing. It can be a what if. It can present as a red herring, play devil's advocate, be provocative. The purpose of Screen of Knowledge is to promote deep processing, associations and connections, to develop perspectives and add layers of understanding, to elaborate on content. So this is not recommended for new content, but rather to go through content that should be established. And it's been established by the learners working through the work before. And that you can just pause your preparation to establish the topic. How will they acquire the knowledge? Design a focus question and a guided note. And at the end of this section of slides, there will be some guided note examples. But for example, a question could be, in what ways does the FFP cover critical aspects of how knowledge is processed? So in what ways does it cover? So consider the role of the FFP. And then, so you obviously design your rubric and or guided notes. Your preparation, make sure you've activated prior knowledge. First step is your focus question. Again, you might model this once or twice. Small group discussions in breakout rooms or jigsaw. Third step is where they record information, and then the synthesis activity. During screen time, especially if you're online, but I really think this can apply to the classroom as well, you ask the question, you have a quiet time to allow the learners to process, and then you probe. You probe responses by asking questions that ask learners to provide proof for their response. So evidence, examples, non-examples, analogy, metaphors. This is really very important. Accept a variety of responses. Use clarification and correcting, especially correcting judiciously. Increase the precision of the response. Pick up on the most sound point of the response, and then elaborate. So that's cue space to shape a discussion. Ask the question, wait, probe, accept, clarify and correct, and then elaborate. And then here I've just put some questions you can ask. So for example, Bob said and June said. They seem to agree on this point, but disagree on another point. Could you each repeat your responses with an example? Again, you're not saying yes or no, you're not saying moving on, you're actually asking them to think about what they've responded. I heard you use a word. Can you use a synonym just so I can be more clear? So that's these type of clarification questions. It's really so important instead of us just either saying yes or no or supplying the correct response. Add on. So in other words, for focus, you either alert all the learners they will have to contribute. So Bob will answer, and then each person in the group will supply evidence, an opinion, or an idea to support or refute Bob's initial response. You can use polling for points of view. You can tell them that you're going to ask them for a reason why. You can redirect, so you can you don't provide the response but guide by focused questions or thoughts to keep the question bouncing around. So Bob said this. June, what do you think about Bob's? Bounce the point on. How would you add to the previous response? Does anyone else have an idea or evidence, an example, a point to add? That's interesting because when we talked about this yesterday or last week, what did we say, Pinky? And then let's think about how we might structure this response for a Cambridge paper question. You can also, in terms of participation, either volunteering, raised hands, random selection. Tell them at the beginning you're going to call on anybody, so everybody must be prepared. Learner poses the question to a peer, or redirection, as I said on the previous slide. Redirection, where you redirect from one student or learner to the other. After posing an open-ended question or giving a statement, let's post it, then let them work on it either in small groups or individually, and then provide focus questions for the pair or small groups, such as how is your response similar or different? The other thing I want you to do is I've posted 2 YouTube clips here for you to go through to learn how to do Google Docs. They're awesome. You can open up a Google Doc, type in the question, and then everybody that's linked can type in their responses. at the same time. It's like an editing program online. It's epic to use, especially if you're going to pose a question and then through the lesson point out different aspects, and then at the end they can do it as a final activity or so on and answer the question on one document. Great, super. Okay, here's just an idea. If you're going to give the students a question or a statement you've posed, they can each have a role within a group. So that's just nice to have a look at. This again is understanding. So by using screen of knowledge, you really get into your highest points with explanation, interpretation, and self-regulation. You're not doing too badly with empathy, because they also have to empathize with other people's responses, and obviously application is quite high. Again, sounds a bit of a complicated strategy, but it's actually not, because it's about your questions and you're setting the boundaries in terms of how you're going to work on keeping everyone focused, okay, or how you're going to do your participation. In other words, random selection, or you're going to pick the first person, or you're going to redirect, so everybody has to be on board. So as long as your structure is sharp, it will actually work really well. Then the Socratic seminar, discussion and debate. He said, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. A wise man, so long ago, posing provocative questions, open-ended questions, not providing the answers, because the students had to learn. Again, not recommended for new content. Focus the discussion around a text or texts they already have read strategically. So that means it's an SQ4R, they've worked on it in depth, they've already reached a mastery of that knowledge. Provide a set of preparatory questions that you give to them so that they can form preliminary ideas before contact time or online time, plus a guided note. Pre-seminar, during the seminar, and a focus statement to synthesize, to bring everything back together. Post-seminar, how do they now present their understanding of the question posed or the statement made? Again, it's just hot seat. You are a linear equation, and the other students ask you a series of questions to try and find out what you are. Each learner receives a list of possible roles or content to be covered, whether they're Goebbels or they are a mitochondria or they are elements on the periodic table. They must prepare at least 3 questions with possible responses and evidence. Each learner is informed at the beginning of the hot seat session which role they will play. Decide on the order, first names, order of entry, and then each learner is required to ask the person in the hot seat. A hot seat rubric is a good idea, and I've put in some examples. And here's some exemplars. So, for example, this is a question and answering learning methodology. It's particularly suitable for independent learning in small groups. Questions are written by the teacher and or students, and then the learners have to go and research, find the answers. And this can be really very useful as a way to prepare for the session. And although this is obviously an English example, it can be used for all subjects. The fishbone is an amazing space to use for a lot of knowledge built up into a nice rubric. So not rubric, a guided note. So you provide the topic and what subheadings everything must fall under, and they go off and they collect the information. A cross classification chart, again, you can pause, but really great if you've got condensing and organizing comparative data. That's really cool. This is great for higher order thinking. So a linear equation, quadratic equation, simultaneous equation, cubic equation. How do I solve it? So describe the process. Describe the process and then provide an example. So describe the process. How do I solve a quadratic equation? And they write it in the how to, step 1, 2, whatever. This is also very nice to build links between events or different aspects. Can be really cool. Sequencing, self-explanatory. And then when synthesizing ideas, so for example, for the Socratic seminar, you want to synthesize the ideas, drawing a conclusion, reducing a body of information to its core, a Feynman technique. So everything goes down into one whole. So these are the different aspects, and this all becomes one concept. This is very cool for higher level questionings that require 3 items. And if I can just show you the exemplar of solids, liquids, and gases, what do they share? All of them, all contain atoms or molecules, and all are matter, gas, liquid, and solid. But now what does a solid share with a gas and a liquid? A solid share with, do you see? So it's very cool for that type of thing. Really make the kids think. And then this is also to hold 2 opposing viewpoints and consider areas of uncertainty. So you've got your gray area. This is lovely for those research questions, pros, cons, and the gray area. And it really helps for learners to extend their thinking. So again, sorry, it's an English example. Is Macbeth responsible for Duncan's death? Yes. No. Maybe not. So really a great way to just promote that thinking, either during your questioning lesson or as an activity prior, or a synthesis activity. Of course, probe for gaps, one of my faves. I just love it because you can ask your question and they can come in 30 seconds during the class, write down what they know, give them another 60 seconds, then they can see what gaps they need. So that's super for your hinges, for your hinge questions. And of course the Freya model, excellent, because there they've got to put in their information, they've got to give your characteristics or facts about, and they've got to put in non-examples and examples. So it's perfect for screen of knowledge. It's perfect for checking to see if they can in fact present real understanding of something. So they prepare this first before screen of knowledge or class of knowledge if it's in the classroom, and then they come with this prepared. The questions are posed and they have got the information in front of them. They can provide non-examples, they can provide examples, characteristics and facts, and so on. So I think this is a great tool to use. Here are some rubric examples in terms of participations, participation rubric, self-grading rubrics. Really, a rubric can save a lot of time and good for marking. And then just to bring you back to Google Docs, I think you can use Google Docs really, really effectively in the classroom and online, or with a hybrid learning where you might have students sitting in online on your lesson and they can type in, and then you have your computer there. Some of the other kids might have brought their computers, and they can actually collaborate in real time using Google Docs. So really watch those, try it out. I think it's fab. In fact, I think I might do the next session with you guys using Google Docs as well. So remember to prepare 5 questions. Think about it. Try and use one of the strategies. Have a hinge question, have a diagnostic question or 2, have some sort of research question if you want, but try and use a variety of questions and so on. I see this got a bit long again. I apologize. Miss you guys, miss being able to speak to you. So now I've got it all on an MP4. Okay, so I will send the MP4, and if you would like the PowerPoint presentation, please let me know, and also let me know that you have in fact watched the presentation. Thanks everyone. Bye.